Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Working in Hockey podcast. I'm your host, Nick Bowins, and today I'm super excited to be joined by the USHL Commissioner Glenn Hefferan. Glenn, fresh off the Fall Classic in Pittsburgh, the season's underway. How's everything going? How are you feeling for the season ahead here?
Well, it was a great. Thanks for having me, Nick. By the way, my pleasure to be here. It was a great fall classic. A lot of tough games. I was pleased to get the feedback we got from scouts and college coaches, and I think that's always an important indicator. And just looking at the parity and a couple of overtime games, a couple of shootouts. I think one shootout won 12 rounds. So we're back in it, and I think everyone's excited to be back in and playing regular season hockey again. So that part of it was exciting. A lot of scouts. I think we had more scouts this year than last year, so that's always a plus. And I can't say enough about the Pittsburgh Penguins organization and UPMC and how they conduct the event. It was just outstanding.
Yeah, that's an awesome rink or venue to have it at there, and look like it went well by all accounts. But for those who don't know, Glenn, what is your role as commissioner? What's some of your core or key duties? What are you working on here on a Wednesday in September?
So I actually have something I've got to get done for one of our GMs on an international matter. It's a lot of relationship building. We have an excellent staff, so I can't say that staff management is a huge part of it. We have a really dedicated team, and they're outstanding. And so I can't say enough good things about our staff. They work hard, as they like to say. We're always working, and they do. So that some of that is a little bit of staff management and direction. We're always looking for media and public relations opportunities to promote the league. Obviously, this would be one for sure. Um, you know, I- it's mostly relationships and building our brand. And there's some you managing issues and fires that start up, but that's part of it. I think a typical, I don't know if there is a typical week. There's nothing typical. There are a few things that happen, but this is an exciting time. Change represents opportunity. And so when we talk about this changing landscape, one of the things that I think we all need to be aware of and recognize is that hockey hates change. We don't like rule changes. We don't want changes in anything. We just like what we've been doing. We're creatures of habit. We talk about good habits, right? On the ice and having good habits. And I think a lot of it is, we're very habit driven, kinds of people. So, when these kinds of changes happen, it represents opportunity to grow the game. And I think from the NHL all the way on down, I think they recognize it. The USHL plays a really vibrant part of the fabric of their league. 27.5% of last year's rosters, were USHL alum for the National Hockey League. We had, I think, over 50% of Division I college hockey was USHL alum, and that's going to continue. Eligibility change is one thing. We didn't forget how to build hockey players. And one of the things we've been, professing, for a long time, I think is our model, is what works. So we have a great model. 92% of our games are on the weekend, and that allows us to have that 2-to-1 practice to game ratio, which practice matters. If you're not getting in, those 20 practices a month, like that's not good for development. So I think from that standpoint, it's making sure that we maintain those standards and raise standards. I think that's another function of our office's task, to make sure that we're following rules and living to that standard. So that's kind of a typical week. So hope that gives you a little glimpse.
Absolutely. No, it's definitely no 2 weeks are the same. No 2 days are the same, I assume, in the role there. You touch on the team, Glenn. How many people are working for the USHL as a league right now? What are some of those different roles or areas? And, I guess where are some of those people situated too for those maybe thinking about a job at the USHL down the road?
So, our core office is in Chicago, but we have a lot of remote staff, and that gives us access to a lot of talent.
Absolutely.
And so, when we post a job, we get applications from across the country, from every walk, and that's great. That's kind of what you want, and that helps kind of bring, um I think that kind of brings a different flavor to how we function as an organization. So, I'm based in New Jersey, but Frank Butler, who runs all of our events, is based in Connecticut. Sean and Stephanie are in the Chicago area. Anthony Veltry's in Pittsburgh, Denver, Michigan, Minnesota, Columbus. Like we've got staff kind of sprinkled throughout. And again, for what we do, being remote, I think that's one of the values of remote is that and as I said, our staff is so dedicated. We've got such a great staff. They really do work all the time. And they don't do it begrudgingly. They do it because they enjoy it and they enjoy seeing the league's success.
Absolutely no, and I think that's to mention offline. I worked a little bit in the OHL growing up, and growing up in small town Ontario. I think that's one of the things that people really like and admire about junior hockey is everybody in junior hockey's in it for the passion, in it for the love of the game, in it to help the players, help the teams, etc. So that definitely rings true to your team and staff there as well. But you mentioned some of the changes. Definitely no shortage of changes and news around junior hockey landscape, college hockey landscape in your couple years here as commissioner. How much have those changed your vision or where you think the league could go? And how much do you view these as an opportunity, like you mentioned?
Well, again, I think because of the way this ecosystem is shifting, I think you're going to see some growth in college hockey, and I see the NHL moving in a direction at breakneck speed towards college hockey. I see that development path. We try to replicate that experience the best we can, as I mentioned, and just in terms of what a player's daily week is. And so this opportunity to grow college hockey, I think is huge for the NHL. It's huge for the American ecosystem, hockey ecosystem, and so you 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 tend to hear about the fear of change and what does it mean, but the reality is this is hockey. We know how to adjust. We do it all the time. We do it in game in real time. We do it in the middle of a season. Something happens. Somebody loses the league had an issue where one of the teams lost its building due to horrendous weather, and the building was out of commission. The league adapts. You adjust. It's just what you do, and it'll be fine. I think this isn't medicine. This is hockey, and there's a lot of kids that want to play. The growth trajectory for USA Hockey is really good. The game is growing from that standpoint, and as I said, it's just more and more opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's well said. And personally, as a fan of the game, I'm very excited to see where things go and how the game continues to grow in the US, especially like I say, moved down here from Canada a year, 2 years ago, and have been continually impressed by the US hockey landscape. Some of the development programs, options, it's a little bit different than it is in Toronto these days, where maybe the enjoyment and the playing the game isn't always at the forefront. But we'll pocket that conversation for another time. Want to talk a little bit more about you, Glenn, and your career, how you got to this point. Take me all the way back here to playing days, officiating days, growing up in Jersey. How did you land in this role today, and what were some of the stops along the way?
Well, I've told this story a lot, but for anybody of your viewers that hasn't heard it, I literally fell into the game. It was Christmas break. I was 12 and a half, and I went to public skating, and I collided with this kid, Kevin Russell. Um, And he got right up and he got up and he looked at me, he goes, "It's those figure skates. That's your problem." And I go, "These are the skates that were under the Christmas tree. Like, I don't know any different." He says, "Oh, you got to get hockey skates." So I went home and called the local department store, and I found that they had Sherbrooks on sale for 24.95. And when my mom got home from work, she was a single parent, and again, it was Christmas week, and so I know she had just spent a lot of money, and but I begged for about an hour, and she finally gave in and brought me to the department store, got a pair of my first pair of hockey skates, and I went back to public skating that night, and I saw this kid Kevin again, and he goes, "Look at you, you're skating better already." And I think he was making that up though, trying to be kind. And so he says, "Now you got to start playing hockey." And I'm like, "What? I don't know anything about it. I don't have any equipment. I don't. I've never played the game in my life." And he goes, "Ah, don't worry. You know, we'll show you. We'll show you how to play. And come to my house afterwards, and I'll give you all my old gear." And he and I were in the same grade together, but different schools. I walk into his house and his dad's looking at me and he introduces me and he says, "Are you Gail's son?" He knew my mom, as it turned out. And so he called my mom up. He says, "You got to come pick up your son. He's got all his hockey gear." And I hear my mom screaming on the phone. So the only thing I had to get is a pair of pants and helmet. And we did that. And I started playing. And as I said, I was awful. It's just a terrible hockey player. But our association got the players to start officiating when we were about 15, and you worked for free. You didn't get paid. You lined mic games. That's basically how you started before they let you ref. And so I got a passion for officiating, and but as you start skating more, you start to skate better, right? So that kind of helped. And then I was pretty young when I started coaching. I think I started coaching when I was 19 at a Bantam team, and I was the assistant coach. And I think work took away the head coach. He had to move or relocate, so all of a sudden, I'm like the head coach of this team, and started to develop a passion for coaching, and then kind of stayed with it. Was became the association president like a year later, and then I was in school, but started just staying involved with it, and then as I'm finishing up school, I started a junior team, and then that's how I met my wife of 36 years this month, actually this weekend. So it's just been a part of the fabric of my life. And as we were getting our family started, I was kind of getting out, and attended my what I was supposed to be my last league meeting, and they ended up electing me president of the league. So it was a tier one AAA league and a junior league. This junior league called the Metropolitan Junior Hockey League. And so developed a passion for that, got involved with USA Hockey, started the Bismarck Bobcats, just stayed involved. I've been really blessed to be in the sport this long, and have it as a career for most of it. And there was a good break in there. I needed a break of it from a career standpoint, but great to be back in it. And as I said, this opportunity came for the USHL, and did a lot of praying on it. Believe me, prayed a lot, and here we are. So entering into my third year. So this has been it's been an amazing journey.
That's awesome, and it's cool how many, different roads are connected again in the hockey world, and how things end up, down the road you may not have predicted or thought you'd end up, with the USHL there, but awesome to hear. I think the one sentiment, even though hockey's probably changed quite a bit over that time, Glenn, the one sentiment about hockey is that it's always good people. Who are some of the people that have helped you, along the way, or you look back in your career and be like, "Oh, might not have been here without that guy"? Who are some of those people, and what are some of the tendencies that you see the most from successful or the most welcoming people within our game?
I would probably have to start off with Dave Ogren, who's had two stints as executive director of USA Hockey. Dave, very patient, thoughtful, taught me a lot about being careful with when you've got to be critical about something and you put it in writing. The minutes in writing, take a day. He taught me the 24-hour rule. and he taught me something else. It's called the four-way test, and I always forget part of it because that's just how I'm wired. But the four-way test was created by Rotary, and it is all about doing things like, is it good for others? Is it fair for all concerned? Those kinds of principles are really good guiding principles. So I would say Dave Ogren, very strong mentor of mine. Dave Tyler, who was the former commissioner of this league. Gino Gasparini, another former commissioner of this league. Both really good mentors of mine. Walter Bush, former president of USA Hockey. Ron DiGregorio, former president of USA Hockey. As I said, I've really been very fortunate to have great mentors along the way. And then local people, Jim Plunkett from New Jersey, who is an affiliate president of the Atlantic District, which is New Jersey, Eastern PA, and Delaware. The gentleman who became my father-in-law was also very involved in affiliate president, served on USA Hockey's board. Certainly, a mentor of mine. So I've really been really fortunate. In fact, when I asked to get married to his daughter, he gave me a condition. He said, one condition, you have to go to Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People course. And here's a man who graduated with a master's degree from the Wharton School of Business. And he said he valued that class more than his degree from Wharton's. And so if it's that important to him, I said, okay, we'll do it. And I took that class, and it's probably life-changing because it really brings to focus a lot of different interpersonal skills. And so I really value that a lot. So I've really been blessed to have some really good mentors. And then, of course, both my parents, I think, really good people. Well, they're not together. They managed to work really well in raising two good kids. And at least I think I am. And so really blessed in that regard. So.
And that's great to hear, and yeah, I think the mentors are so important, and it's cool how many. Again, we're kind of tied to the grassroots side of things in hockey. There, for anybody who hasn't read that book or attended the course, yes, How to Win Friends and Influence People, fabulous read, fabulous course. That's awesome to hear as well. What would somebody who's applying to a team or the league office at the USHL, what would they be able to do, Glenn, to stand out on their job application? Like you said, with how exciting junior hockey is these days. I'm sure you guys have no shortage of applicants. Everybody wants to work in the game. Everybody wants to land these jobs. How would somebody stand out when they're applying to a role with you guys or with one of the teams, maybe?
I think showing a pattern of consistency. If you have a really good consistent to your academics, getting good grades, you don't have to graduate cum laude. You just have to have really good grades because that's only one demarcation. Showing consistency in your employment.
Hmm.
Uh, I think those are things that matter. Being personable, honest. You can tell when someone's putting on an air and someone who's not. So just be yourself. We have a unique process, and when we hire within the league, we bring several, irrespective of their title or role, we bring a few people into the process when we're interviewing candidates because our culture is really important to our staff. And you've got to, because a lot of times, you have a title and a job function, but that doesn't mean you're not going to be asked to do something else that kind of goes outside your lane. That's the nature of a small staff. We've got 10 people that work for us. And so I think from that standpoint, you have to have that ability to show that you're a team player and it's the team first. And you can convey that with sincerity, or you can convey it, um, in a kind of a phony way. And I think most of the time that shows through when you're going through your application process. Years ago, I used to just interview for jobs just because the job intrigued me and I wanted to know more. Not necessarily looking for a change, but also to keep my skills up on interviewing. So I always found that to be fascinating to do. And I worked on Wall Street in my like you could literally get a new job every week back then. Like, it was like people did. I knew people that had changed companies 3 times in a year. just because of the growth. Wall Street was growing and technology had not yet caught up. And so there was still a lot of manual work going on. And so computers were just, having a desktop computer was, like there was one per department, companies that I worked for. So it was just becoming, a thing. So I think from that, back to your question, I think it's just being genuine, be yourself, don't feel like you have to put on any kind of airs.
Yeah, I think that that's excellent advice, and definitely, like you said, it's people can tell when it's genuine, when it's sincere, versus when it's desperate or chasing a favor or otherwise. There, I think on ice, Glenn, the USHL is always referred to as a developmental league, or I've heard you say a survival league. How does that pertain to GMs, coaches, people on the business side of things in sales or marketing? Do you view it the same way as you do on ice there, where the USHL is able to develop and mold players on the ice? It's also able to develop people off ice and kind of help them get to that next career path as well?
Sure. I think you're always building for the next, right? At our level, we build players for the NHL and college hockey, but that's no different for coaches and equipment managers. And the strength and conditioning coach for the national team development program is now at the Buffalo Sabres. The former Dubuque coach, is in the American Hockey League. The former Green Bay coach is in the American Hockey League. John Cooper came out of the Green Bay program. Jim Montgomery and Jeff Blashill and Dan Muse. Like there's a litany of really good. And I think of the 64, I think there's 20 head coaches in the college hockey ranks that are like Mike Hastings comes to mind at Wisconsin. And, so the league has been a developmental path for everyone. I had somebody tell me this, the other day. They said, actually last night, they said, this is the challenge that this league has. Scouts and agents look at your league, the USHL, and recognize that it's a really hard place to play. And because so much of what happens in the game is stat driven, a lot of goals and scoring and that, you take a look and I think you'll see that players that have left here and gone to play elsewhere actually find maybe a little bit easier to score because some of those leagues are easier to play in. It's really hard to play here. And I think that's what has given us the ability. I mean, we took a deep dive on, on our just the data of just our NHL players. And I'm blown away by, so we recognize that the NHL tracks their drafts in a certain way. We don't always get credit for certain players. Like Macklin Celebrini is not going to be credited to the USHL, even though he spent a year playing for Chicago and he gets drafted a year later. And so while he was in college. And so when you start looking at all of our alum, there's 521 in the last 11 drafts, 521 players, far more than any other individual league. That's the fact. And I think that trajectory will continue. You'll see a bump in the road this year, and that's okay. This is the nature of shifting sand. We'll get back right on that same path, and we'll continue to develop really good players because this is such a tough place to play. And I've quoted Rand Pecknold many times. He said these kids that come out of the USHL, they're just battle tested. They're just battle tested, and that's our job. Our job is to make these kids turn them into good young men on and off the ice, and I think that's what our product does.
Yeah, no, that's super cool to hear and totally agree. Even just watching games online or in person, it's there's a lot of parity in the league. The talent just continues to rise, right? What percentage, roughly, Glenn, of players in the USHL go on to play college hockey or beyond there?
90 I think it was 92%, 93% of our players advance on, and that actually could go up. Some of the players that don't advance or didn't advance in the past is because they were deemed ineligible because of their previous path. So some of those players we pick, if you're, getting a 20-year-old out of the CHL, those players weren't eligible to advance at a time. That's changed. So I think you'll see that number probably stay the same, or maybe move a little bit. And listen, let's be honest, college isn't for everybody. It's not. And so some players by design want to become the best player they can and then move on to the professional ranks. Probably taking a deeper dive into the American League numbers, we certainly don't spend a ton of time on that. Obviously, I think we look at where our numbers are from from a NHL standpoint. One of the things that always amazes me is our free agent signings. The number of players that weren't drafted. I think in last year's class there were 44 free agent signings, that were in the NHL last year. So I'm just so blown away by that. And as I said, I think the numbers speak for themselves. We're going to continue to do that job. So, but I think you'll see college hockey grow. We're going to grow. There is a need for more junior development and more opportunity for American players, and we're going to continue to be that source. So.
That's super interesting. I think I could talk your ear off for a couple hours about that and all the statistics of it. But
Yeah,
you
sorry
mentioned
about that. I'm a bit of a data geek.
I love it. I could sit there and read those numbers all day, Glenn. But you mentioned growth without sharing kind of all your secrets or plans. Is expansion something that the USHL is looking at or thinking of as the landscape continues to shift here?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had 12 markets. I think now a 13th it's in our hopper. We're taking a look at it, but we're going to do things in a very strategic way. We have a lot of planning sessions going on right now, and growth and expansion is part of that. We have opportunities to grow in Canada, which out of respect, we've backed away from those. Actually, in one particular case, that individual has shifted to an American market, and they're happy to do it. I think that's terrific. I've mentioned Middletown, Ohio, one in particular. Really good progress there. But there's other ways to grow, and so we've got 4 teams going into new buildings over the next, let's see, two, probably in the next 2 years. They'll 3 of those 4 will be in new buildings, and then within 4 years, I think that fourth team will be in a new building. So, and we've got some teams that are spending millions of dollars to update their buildings, and so all of that player experience related. The NHL has made it clear that it's all about the player experience, and it's having well-rounded players. And I think that could be a challenge, especially from an academic standpoint, and making sure players, can actually get to school and then be able to do the academic work. Because in spite of what anybody may be thinking, they're athletes, they don't really go to class. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. You have to you have to make your classes. You got to make your grades, and that predicates the future of your life. And not everyone's going to play in hockey for a living. Most won't. Um, I did a presentation a few months back during the World 18s. It was arguably many of the top division or tier 1 youth coaches. And I asked them by a show of hands, how many of you play Division 1 hockey? And 2/3 of the room put their hand up. So I was really, yeah, I was surprised, but really happy to see that. So when you have that kind of expertise, you have to be smart, and doing your work is important. So I think we're uniquely positioned in all of that, and all of that ties into how that ties into expansion is we need agents in the NHL and college hockey to know that no matter what team you're playing on, you are essentially getting the same experience
Percent.
on and off the ice, academically, strength and conditioning, nutrition, billet support, like all of those things have to match, no matter what team you're playing in the USHL.
100%. No, that's awesome to hear, and I really like what you said about growth comes in a lot of different ways, right? People look at expansion and think, "Oh, the next step, add 6 more teams." That's not always the case, or maybe what's best for the league or the players, like you mentioned. So, super interesting to hear there as well. 2 final ones from me here, Glenn. First and foremost, is there one thing that you can point to, an initiative or an accomplishment that you're most proud of over your tenure here as commissioner of the USHL so far?
Oh, wow. I kind of leave that to other people to decide. Um, Yeah, I would say the league's relationship with the NHL has never been better, and we've worked really hard at that. To do that, as I said, we presented to the NHL GMs and head coaches 2 weeks ago. It's the first time that's happened. We have some other things happening with the NHL that had not happened in the past. So I think from that standpoint, the relationship has been very positive. Um, I think our media and content is much stronger than it was 2 years ago. Our messaging, connecting with players at the grassroots level, and then our relationships with our counterparts in the CHL. I have pretty good working relationships with the commissioners up there, and they're good guys, and I think they overall want the same. They want to see the same thing for the sport. They want to see growth, and that takes vision and cooperation, and like it's just good to see that mindset is there, at least generally speaking. And so, um, I think those are positives. We're very front facing. As the landscape changed, our position has not changed. We're still looking at this the same way in terms of the pathway. I think everyone is really clear that the NHL sees the pathway to development through college hockey, and so our position isn't changing on any of that. So I think that's a real positive accomplishment. I didn't think there was any doubt that that would be the case. When you see there's an expression that John Van Beesbrook likes to use: when the NHL sneezes, everyone gets a cold. And so, they are the North Star of the sport. And so, um, I, I'm, I think I'm really appreciative of the vision that, Bill Daly is largely responsible for these kinds of relationships with all of the leagues and college
Mhm.
hockey, but even some of our meetings Gary has sat in on, and their understanding of things and how they think is just, I think, is so critical for the growth of the game in North America. And so the fact that they're so dialed in on it, I think, is another, it's not my accomplishment. It's just a great accomplishment for the sport, and the fact that they're willing to always listen and hear what the concerns of the day are.
Totally, yeah, and I think that brings us full circle on the conversation here. We started about relationships and focusing on the player's experience, player's development, and kind of finish it off there with how the NHL and other leagues view it as well. Glenn, the final one that we ask every guest we have on the Working in Hockey podcast here is, what's the best piece of career advice that you could give for somebody looking to break into the hockey industry today?
Be a student of the game.
Hmm.
No game, no matter what you're doing. I suggest this to people that start working in a team, irrespective, especially if they're front office, though. Um, be a fan for a day. Go buy a ticket, park your car on game day, go in, hand your ticket in, sit and watch and observe the game at the fan and get that fan experience. Because once you see that and experience that for the first time as a fan, your perspective in your new role is going to be different. So be curious about those things. And being a student of the game, know who's who, and know what's going on in the game at our level. You don't have to be an expert in the NHL or college hockey. Just know what's happening in the junior landscape. Look and be curious about what other teams are doing, and have that willingness to want to learn and open your mind. Like the learning doesn't stop after your secondary and college education and master's degree, and it's just beginning. I always think schooling gives you the foundational wiring of your brain to learn. The learning is actually what happens afterwards. So always keep your mind open to learning and trying new things. So I think that's probably the best advice. Be a student of the game and recognize that the learning is just beginning.
It definitely is, and that's phenomenal advice, Glenn. Can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on here, share your story, share a little bit about the USHL. So, looking forward to the season ahead, and really appreciate your time here today.
Thanks so much, Nick. I appreciate it as well.
Awesome. We'll talk to you guys soon. We'll see you next week here on the next episode of the Working Hockey Podcast.